All right, so we are very excited to be recording with today's guest, a young man who, when you consider the pomp and circumstance that the surfing industrial complex often layers onto upcoming talent, flew relatively under the radar, but only to emerge this year as one of the primary surfers on the championship tour. He hails from Burleigh Heads on Australia's Gold Coast, a standout junior, but he, like many of his contemporaries on the Gold Coast, arguably had to wrestle with the very long shadows cast by the Cooley kids of Dean Morrison, Joel Parkinson, and Mick Fanning. That said, he found a way. He worked in the DHD warehouse while he was still developing and competing. He qualified for the Elite Championship Tour in the 2022 season. He broke his leg at Pipeline hours before his rookie debut and had to requalify through the Challenger Series, which he does. He returned in 2023. He finished 17th. He returned again this season, new sponsor in Vissla, and after the first 5 events of the 2024 season, he's not only made the mid-season cut, but he's currently ranked 10th as of recording. Banner year for him, and with the film El Paraíso coming out very soon, all things are coming up, Lob. So Liam O'Brien, thank you so much for joining us on the lineup today.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So we were joking before, we are both here on the Gold Coast today. I'm in Coolangatta. I think you're home at Burleigh Heads, and this is probably betraying my age a little bit, but despite us being geographically close, it's still a bit of a hike to drive these days because there's been a lot of development on the Gold Coast. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a fair bit of traffic. So yeah, we're remote, but we're not actually that far away, I guess.
We are recording this. It's early May when we're recording, post-relegation, pre-Tahiti, but I think by the time our episode airs, we would have completed the CT at Chopu and we'll be on our way to El Salvador. But talking about this particular week, what have you been up to? Like, what do you get up to in between events? You've made the cut, you're at home. What's your week been like?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to just relax a little bit, get away from the contest scene. It's been actually kind of hectic. There's been a bit going on, but yeah, typically I'll either just cruise at home, surf the local spots, and just enjoy not having to put a rashie on or hassle in a crowd before an event. And yeah, that's typically what I do. Otherwise, I'll try and just watch swells and chase waves around the place. But yeah, for the moment, I'm just hanging at home.
Now, Snapper Rocks, we are here this week. It's the Challenger Series event. It's the Bonsoy Gold Coast Pro presented by GWM. It was not a venue that was on the championship tour calendar when you qualified, but just before this week's event started, it was announced that it will rejoin the CT calendar in 2025. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's exciting. As you said, I've never got to surf Snapper on the tour, and I haven't really surfed many events at Snapper full stop. I did one Challenger there, and that's been it pretty much. So yeah, I'm excited to do an event close to home. It's obviously a really good wave, sand bottom point, warm water, not too much to complain about. So yeah, and then even better that you get to surf it with the lack of crowd that's normally out there. So it'd be pretty cool.
That seems to be the through line for all the CT surfers or wild cards that are competing in the CS this week. They're like, well, yeah, of course, to go out there and surf Magic May at Snapper Rocks with 1 or 2 other people out there. It sounds pretty good. Growing up on the Gold Coast yourself, did you come to the event when you were a kid and check it out, or did you kind of try to avoid the circus when it was in town?
No, for sure. When I was a young kid, I mean, I've always lived kind of up the northern end of the coast, so it is a little bit of a trek down there, but no, when I was a young kid, I got to go down there a few times, chase the pros around for autographs and stuff, which was pretty trippy. I think I got Jordy's autograph when I was a young kid, and I used to love, I still do, but love watching him surf. And now it's kind of bizarre to think back to that now that I'm like competing against him regularly and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. It's cool to reflect sometimes and just sort of get an idea of how far you've come.
Totally. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about the 2024 CT season as it stands today. End of 2023, you release the film Wandering to core community acclaim. It was incredible. I mean, I think everyone who is in the know already held you as a surfer in very high regard, but we were all still blown away by what we saw. You signed with Vissla, so that's a great new chapter, and joined their impressive team. But where was your head at January 2024? You've been through quite a few changes. You're about to start the CT season. What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a bit turmoilic, that little period trying to transition from Billabong and then now into Visla, which is really cool. Yeah, as you know, last year there was all sorts of contracts getting cut and people going every which way, industry-wise. So I was really lucky to land with Visla, which is a really cool brand that I love representing. But even cooler is just the fact that it's people I've known for a long time as well, especially in the Australian part of the brand. Yeah, one of my best friends, his dad runs the Australian part of the brand, Toby Mossop, his dad John Mossop, and a lot of the guys that work there I know quite well as well. I actually worked there for a while back in the day in their warehouse, so it's kind of funny. It's almost come full circle. Yeah, but as far as the start of the year, I mean, once all that was sort of settled, I was just pretty excited to get going again. We had a pretty big off season, so yeah, I was keen to try and get back into the competitions and work on all the lessons that I learnt last year, try and improve on my mistakes I made.
You know, I was talking to Rabbit, Wayne Bartholomew, a few episodes ago, and he brought up this great point, you know, when he was talking about Snapper returning to the championship tour pre-relegation. And he said, if you look at these waves, they're all super serious, right? You've got Pipeline, Sunset Beach, Super Tubos, Bells Beach, Margaret River. And he goes, the point of difference that Snapper provides is it's so high performance and so rippable, and he's like, dare I say, fun, right? But if you look at the calendar this year and you're looking at Pipeline and Sunset Beach and Super Tubos and Bells and Margaret River, for you coming in just a couple years onto the CT, are there any of those venues that you look forward to every year? Are there any that you're like, oh, I need to work a bit harder at that particular wave? Are there any you're scared of?
Oh, I mean, definitely scared of Pipe. I think everyone's pretty scared of Pipe.
Right.
There's there's an undeniable intimidation factor out there. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like even if you're really good out there, there's still that scariness about it. You know, you can get hurt, you can get smashed, or you can get an incredible wave. And then as for the other ones, yeah, obviously not quite as death-defying, but yeah, there's still some elements of risk as well. Margs and Sunset get pretty big. But for me, I love the challenge of surfing waves like Pipe. I won't say I'm like a guru at it or anything, but I do love getting a good barrel, and especially when there's that fear component and you overcome that and you get a good barrel on top, I know it all culminates in a pretty good sensation. So yeah, events like that at Pipe are pretty epic, and it's something I look forward to a lot. Again, like Snapper, it's a chance to surf it without a crowd too. So there's all these bonuses of surfing in that event. But yeah, particularly for me, none of the events in the first half, I don't really find any of them to be like a real, I don't know, weak point's probably the wrong word, but like something that I despise from going, damn it, I got to go there and surf this place. Like I really enjoy going to all those spots. I love Hawaii. I've been gone there for a long time. Obviously with my old sponsor getting to stay on the beach and stuff, it was pretty much an annual thing going over there. And then Australian events are great, you know, and it's awesome to be able to compete at home in front of friends and family. And then Portugal I really like too. A couple of the beaches up this end of the coast get pretty similar. So yeah, I really enjoy going there. It's almost like a cold water version of a few of the ways around here. So yeah, I do quite like Portugal as well. So I don't know, haven't given you much of a scathing review of anything, but it's it's all pretty fun. It's all got its perks, and yeah, kind of enjoy traveling to all those spots.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when a surfer like yourself, when you start on your CT season every year, are you the kind of person that goes, I've got these goals, you know, I want to make a final, or I want to finish top 10 or whatever? Or are you someone that just kind of takes it as it comes? Because as of recording, 10th in the world, you know, eyeing the back half of the season with an opportunity to make the final 5. You've had great success already, but I'm curious in terms of your kind of mental process in terms of heading into the championship tour.
Yeah, well, I suppose my first year, I'd been injured the year before, so I mean, anyone that goes in an event wants to win. That's just a given. But I think my overall outlook was a little more about just learning and enjoying it. I really wanted to make the cut. I wanted to make the top 5, win a title, of course, but I suppose it wasn't a realistic goal at that time. I was like, oh, I just want to do as well as I can, learn as much as I can, and just really soak up getting to surf on this tour that I've been trying to get to for so long. So for me, last year was just like a really cool year. I learned a lot, had a lot of really cool experiences, and just after the year prior, like missing out with an injury on the year, it was so cool just to be able to do the whole lap and get to surf all the spots that I've dreamed of surfing forever. So that was last year. And then I suppose, coming to this year, I pretty much just looked at how I went then and some of the mistakes I made and some of the things I felt like I could improve on, and spent the off season kind of working on that with Bottle and another coach I work with, Mark Richardson. And we just put a lot of work in and tried to clean up the rough edges, so to speak. And I came into this year aiming a bit more for that top 5 for sure. I think I made set a conscious goal. Go, all right, I really want to get there. I'm not going to put stupid amounts of pressure on getting there, but that's where I want to head, and I want to keep kind of trending in that direction, trending up. And then as the years progressed, I suppose I haven't had any huge results, but just the consistency and those sorts of things have helped me get a bit of confidence. And I'm definitely at a point now where I just feel like I can, if I'm on, I can mix it with some of the good guys, and I feel like I'm not too far off the mark. So if I could just keep pushing and keep getting better and better, then maybe it is achievable to get to that top 5 and try and have a crack at the title. Obviously that's the goal at this point. Just try and keep pushing, keep bettering, and see if I can get to that top 5. But I think my first and foremost goal at this point is I just really want to win a comp. I just love to win an event. I haven't won an event for a long time, so that's the big goal. I think I'm getting to that point where I'm like, far out. I enter a lot of events and don't win. So it's like, it'd be nice to get that feeling again. But I suppose, I don't know, to answer your question about where my mindset is, I'm kind of a bit in between. Like I'll set goals, but then I try and just be in the moment and work with what I've got in the moment as much as I can, because I don't like having these massive expectations. And when things start going south, just to feel like the whole weight of the world on me and going, what's going on? Why isn't it working? I like to feel like I'm holding up my end of the bargain, doing all the work I can, controlling what I can control, and then letting the outcomes be what they will. And sort of having the goals and things a little bit more in the background.
Right. It's interesting to hear you break it down that way too, because and obviously, every surfer that gets to this level, they've probably in a lot of ways been supported throughout their young careers as being like, yeah, you are going to be one of the best. You are going to be a world champion. So as you said, it's obviously you want to win every event. Obviously you want to win a world title, but sometimes you see people when they get so laser set on that is the goal, any little speed bump can throw them so far off, right? They get like a 17th and they're like, oh my God, that's so disconnected from what I set out to do that now I have to deal with it, as opposed to what it sounds like you've been doing, which is like building those levels up. And it really does remind me a lot of when Mick Fanning was kind of running through all his titles. I remember he said something that seemed really profound to me, which is you can't let the losses derail you for more than a day. Like you lose at whatever part of the contest, if it's, you get a 33rd or whatever it was back then, or a second, at any loss you get, like, be grumpy about it for a couple hours, but then you have to process it and move on, because if you carry that with you to the next event, you're dead. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't know, I think I come from a place of not having I didn't have a terrible junior career, but I definitely wasn't touted to be next world champ or next tour surfer even. I was just sort of plugging away. And I got pretty comfortable with losing, and I think I got a realization pretty early on that I just love surfing and really enjoy the challenge of competing too. So obviously I really want to win, but I just love the whole process and the whole challenge that it brings. It's free surfing so fun too, and I really love doing that. But I think competitive surfing just gives you that little extra discipline, and I don't know, you get that, just a different buzz, I suppose, that you can get from the sport. And more than anything, I just want to make sure every time I surf, I'm just producing an effort and an execution that I can be proud of. Whether that's a win or a loss is almost irrelevant. Like, and if I can continually do that, then I feel like the the results will come. But yeah, I really enjoy just that competition and the not knowing. You know, sometimes you go crap, but then pushing through those difficult times just makes the success that much sweeter.
Yeah, it's well said. Like, and I do think we've been talking about this quite a lot this weekend and around the site. And, you know, I think, you know, for some people, they get kind of polarized. They're like, I'm only into contest surfing, I'm only into free surfing. But, you know, I think kind of the most potent talents, they can do both. You know, when I was growing up and I was like Team Andy Irons, like, as a fan, I'm like, yeah, I want to watch him in Snap 2 or Trilogy, and I want to watch him beat Kelly in Japan in the CT. It's all good, you know? And for someone like yourself, we mentioned you released Wandering last year, but you seem like you strike a really nice balance between focusing on, you know, CT competition, CS competition, whatever it is, but also free surfing. And I'd imagine you can leverage the experiences in both to be better at the other part. And, you know, we talked about today's episode. It's releasing just ahead of the Surf City El Salvador Pro CT event. And you, alongside Maddie McGillivrary and Yago Dora, you're releasing a film from your time in El Salvador in the past, which is called El Paraíso. Can you tell us a little bit about this particular project?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'd never been to El Salvador before, and Matt hit me up to jump on this project with him, and yeah, we had a good time. We got to explore some of the spots around there and check out the local restaurants, cafes, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously the landscape's really beautiful there, a lot of mountains and waterfalls and all sorts. So it was really cool to just go and get away from the comp a little bit and actually check the place out. I really love doing that when I get to travel, making sure I don't just sort of go from the hotel room to the event site. That can be pretty, when you look back, that's pretty miserable and you're like, wow, I didn't even see that place at all. So it was really cool to get out, check it all out, and we got some fun waves as well. So that was, I was very fortunate to be a part of that. And yeah, would love to do it again.
Well, and I think they are talking about El Paraíso too, but it's interesting, right? When you think about other sports, this has come up for years where people go, you know, what do the world's best tennis players do on their day off? And the joke is like, well, anything but play tennis, you know.
Yeah.
But when you talk about what do the world's best surfers do on their day off, they're like, they want to go surfing. You know, that's how much they love it. And, you know, for those of us who have never been, like, what is El Salvador like? You mentioned this was your first trip, but just based off the film, no shortage of waves. And we're not even talking about the main event site. You guys got to kind of travel around and it looked like there's a ton of waves.
Yeah, there's seems like endless point breaks just all along the coast there. But it's pretty quintessential Central America, you know, dense jungle, warm, humid, warm water. And then you get those pretty long period ground swells that travel up across the Pacific as well. So there's plenty of surf around. In the time we were there, we didn't really get any flat days, which was pretty cool. And yeah, I think there's a lot of point breaks, a lot of kind of cobblestone point breaks, a few sand bottom ones, a few little beachy things. But yeah, I was actually pretty surprised with how many point breaks there were there. I kind of thought there'd be more little beaches or even reef breaks or something like that. So it was a bit of a pleasant surprise to be greeted with a whole bunch of pretty cool little right-hand points.
Yeah. And balancing, you know, CT competition and then free surfing. And then I guess in the context of El Paraíso being there in El Salvador, you know, in that same window, are you the kind of free surfer that likes to experiment with their equipment? Or do you go, nope, this is just another opportunity for me to continue to get really sharp on my Ferrari DHDs here?
I honestly don't think into it too much. I just kind of just ride whatever I've got, and if it goes good, I'm stoked. But I get the odd sort of different board, but yeah, obviously with competition, you spend most of your time trying to dial in performance boards. So when the comps are done, I'll just ride those boards just because they're sitting around and it's easy. Probably just laziness, but no, I do enjoy riding different stuff. You can definitely get stale riding your own, you know, typical 511 shortboard day in, day out. It can get pretty boring at some point. You're like, far out. I just don't feel like taking the same line and surfing the same way I've done for the last year. So yeah, it can be fun to bust out something different. And even if it doesn't go as good, just to ride it, take some different lines. And yeah, it can definitely just freshen up your stoke on surfing. But no, I don't, I'd like to probably just explore different shapes and designs a little more than I do. But yeah, for now it's pretty high performance focused. Just on the way for thin stick most of the time.
Well, I get it, because you're one of the proud horses of the Darren Handley stable for the Vizsla CT Shaper rankings, which we're in our second year on, and Darren's really animated about that. He wants to take out the shaping world title. But with regards to your go-to competition board, what model do you go with, or is it just a custom?
Yeah, in the past year or so, I've been riding the DNA a lot, with a round tail on it, and kind of some, like, had the rails pulled down a bit lower in the rail, and a bit more flip in the nose. But then probably the past two events, I've been jumping on that Juliet board that Darren's developed with Ethan, and that thing's been going really good. Just a little more speed and spark than the DNA and waves that aren't as steep and pushy,
Right.
So it's been nice to have that option. It was definitely a big thing last year. That was one of the main things I was kind of trying to work on for this year, was that I felt like I had a really good short board, a really good short board for 3-4 foot waves when it's steep and, it's good. But when it got a little bit grindier, which I kind of didn't anticipate being on tour, but you still do surf a couple of heats.
Sure,
yeah. It's not terrible, but it's, you might surf the odd heat where it's not perfect. And I never really had the board to step down. I had the short board and then the step ups, but never the one to step down. And I really noticed Felipe would have, obviously he was the class standout surfer last year. And I was watching a lot of what he was doing and trying to learn what I could, because, yeah, he pretty much blew me away with how he'd surf in every event. It's just like, wow, man, this guy's a freak. So, I was very interested in what he was doing, and it seemed like he had a whole host of boards designed for waves that were, like not that far apart. Like, for example, like a 2 foot wave to a 4 foot wave, he'd have 3 different boards. This is what I could ascertain from afar. 3 different boards that he'd go to. He'd come out with one day, drop like a tiny bit, and then he'd have another one out, like, for example, that quad fin board. Right. And I was sort of talking with Darren about that, and he was just like, yeah, you need something to step down to when it's a little weaker, so you can keep your speed up and still have that spark and point of difference. So that was kind of what I was searching around for, and he gave me a few of those Ethan models just to try last year. And I didn't mind them, but I thought just how they felt, I didn't think they were quite right. I was like, they're a bit loose and I fall off a lot. And then I didn't really ride them for the first part of the year. And then come bells, I rode a step up first round, that's pretty solid. But then second round, it was kind of junky, winky pop. And the boards I had, the DNA boards, just weren't feeling too good. And I pretty much just grabbed that board. I went, all right, it's meant to work in these ways. So I think I'll just try it. Like, it's got to work. So I pretty much grabbed it for my heat and didn't look back from there. It felt so good and kind of gave me exactly what I was looking for. So that was a pretty cool little revelation for me. And we'll definitely be keeping that one in the quiver for the back end of the year.
Nice. Yeah, it is one of those funny things, like, especially, before I started, we didn't have the internet really, or the internet in its current fashion, right? And so you assume, you're like, man, the Dream Tour, all I see from the magazines and the highlights, it must just pump every heat of every round at every spot, like, must be cooking. And like, it's great. Like, we go to amazing spots, we go in hopefully the best time of year, and we get these amazing days. But as you pointed out, it's like, sometimes it is going to be 2 foot slow winky pop, or sometimes you're going to be in a beach break, and you kind of have to mow through that and wrap your head around the fact that, like, if I get through this, maybe I get to the classic day at this spot, and that's kind of the best you can hope for on the tour.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, everyone that surfs knows the ocean's pretty temperamental, so
sure.
You kind of, even me, like, having the internet access, so you kind of tune in more when it's pumping, and that's sort of what's implanted on your mind. So it's like, I'm just going to surf cooking waves all year long. And you're like, roll up, all right, it's on, and it's half a foot. You're like, I wasn't expecting this. So, yeah, you definitely need to be ready for all conditions. Obviously, it's a step up in conditions from the Challenger, sure, and then, of course, the QS as well. But, you still surf a bit of everything, so you got to have the equipment ready for that too.
We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll have more with Liam O'Brien on the lineup. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with the Gold Coast's Liam O'Brien. Liam, we talked about it a little bit already, but you are a Burleigh Head surfer. Are you Burleigh Heads born and bred, or did you move there?
My youth was a little bit all over the show. Kind of moved around a little bit nomadic. But I was born in Brisbane actually, and then lived on the Gold Coast. I pretty much moved down as soon as I was born. Lived on the Gold Coast until I was about 5, I think. And then all of my family and extended family are actually from Victoria, in a place called Portland, which is the same town Adam Robbo's from. So moved back there for a couple of years, from when I was 5 until 9. Lived in Victoria. Lived in Melbourne for a year or 2 as well in that time. I think I lived in Portland 1 year, 2 years in Melbourne. Anyway, and then came back to the Gold Coast when I was 9. So yeah, and then I've been here since. So more or less I've been here most of my life, minus 3 years. But yeah, I don't know. I won't claim to be born and bred, but close enough to it.
Yeah, and as we talked about, like, it's not a huge geographical location when you look from like Duranbah up to, I guess, North Stradbroke. If you're looking at a map, it takes up a tiny percentage of the global map, right? But it does feel like each of these places is so distinct with its own community. Like, Duranbah and Snapper Rocks feel distinct, and Tugun feels distinct. Burleigh Heads feels distinct. North Stradbroke feels distinct. Is that fair to say? And would you say that the Burleigh Heads community, even though it's part of the Gold Coast, it has its own kind of identity and develops its own special type of surfer? Yeah,
for sure. I think probably because there's so many people and so many surfers on the Gold Coast, every spot's got its own little like group of regulars. I suppose that's probably the best way of describing it. And yeah, Burleigh's no different. There's just a group of guys that surf there all the time. And then that's mostly, they're all in the Board Riders Club as well. So it's a really cool place to grow up and be a part of that community. They've really supported me throughout my whole career, but especially in the early days, getting me going and helping with like sponsorship, even opportunities to surf in tag teams and those sorts of events for the club was just so cool in my development. And I can't say enough good things about the club. They've helped me get to where I am today. So it's been really cool. And then to have people like, for example, Jay Bottle Thompson in the community, he was on tour when I was a young kid, so I looked up to him a lot, and it was so cool getting to see him come back and surf the point and get to chat to him and hang out and all the rest. And just to sort of have someone to look up to and really see that you could do it. Someone from your town's done it, so it was like, okay, well, maybe it is a thing that you can do. Because even though, as you said, like Snapper's not far away, but felt like a whole different world almost. I didn't surf down there. Still don't surf down there that much. And Mick and Joel and stuff, they're just like probably like someone from any other beach, just like these gods of surfing that you can't, they're kind of untouchable. So when I was a kid, at least, I had not really any contact with them. That was just like, whoa, Mick's out, this is crazy. But yeah, it was really cool to have someone like Bottle who's so humble and so giving with his time around the club and really take me under his wing and show me how to get there and how to do it.
That's awesome. And, how did you specifically get started in surfing? Mom, dad get you into it? Siblings? Were there other activities or sports that took your interest? Like, how'd you get your start in surfing?
Yeah, my dad surfed his whole life, so he pretty much got me into it. I can't even really remember getting into it, to be honest. I was pretty young. I was just, for as long as I can remember, I've just loved it. I just can't get enough. Pretty addicted to just riding waves, I guess, standing on a bit of fiberglass on some water, which is pretty ridiculous when you put it that way. But no, it's just so much fun at its core. I just love doing it, whether I do it competitively or just as a hobby, around another job. I think I'll be trying to do it as long as I can, and I would have done it whether I was a pro or not. So yeah, it's just extra cool. It's like a cherry on top that I get to do it for a job. It's pretty sick.
Well, let's talk about that too. I love getting this answer from elite surfers because it differs so much. But for someone like yourself, dad gets you into it when you're really young. As you say, you're like, I don't remember ever not being a surfer. You've got this great community with the Burleigh board riders. You've got mentors like Jay Bottle Thompson. was there a moment specifically for you when you went, oh, like this could be a career for me, like I'm getting sponsorship or I'm winning events or whatever it is? Was there a moment for you that you go, oh, I'm going to try to make this my career? Or was it always something that you're like kind of gradually just fell into?
Yeah, I think it just probably developed over time more. Like just there was never like a real extreme trajectory for me where I went from nothing to all of a sudden like, whoa, I'm just killing it all of a sudden. It was like a very slow process of gradually improving. But no, it's cool to reflect that the first ever person I coached with was actually Michael McGillivrary, and he used to take me surfing and stuff when I was real young, which was pretty cool. I didn't have a good concept of who he was at the time. I was obviously like in awe. It's like, this guy rips, but I never like knew how good he was. So it's looking back, I'm like, all right, that was so cool to get to hang with someone like that. And he's such a legend, and he taught me a lot of stuff very early on and kind of gave me a little bit of the belief that it is a thing that you can do, you know. You're like, yeah, you can be a pro, you got to do this and that, and these are, you know, some of the sacrifices you'll have to make. But he kind of instilled that idea in me. And then even my family, they've always been so supportive throughout my junior career and stuff, letting me go to comps and, you know, letting me pursue my dream as much as I wanted to. But yeah, I mean, I never dominated as a junior or anything, and then I was kind of there or thereabouts, but always just sort of maybe just out of the bubble. I think, and I had sponsors and stuff all the way through, but for me, the moment when I was really like, okay, this is something I can do, was actually when I got, fast forwarding a fair way, it was when I got second at Huntington. Because before that, like, it was a bit of a pipe dream making the tour. I was like, I'd love to do it, but I've no idea if I can or if I'm good enough or what it's going to take, or if it's, you know, the chips are going to fall my way. But when that happened, I was like, far out. It's like I could actually qualify this year. I'm right there, and I actually got a second in one of these big events. So for me, that was probably the biggest moment in my career where things had a bit of like a paradigm shift, going from like, oh, maybe I can, to like, oh, I can definitely do this. I've just got to find a way, you know?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, you're a young man, right? You're 25. And, you know, if you were born 10 years earlier, the industry would have been in a radically different place, right? It's changed so much even in the last 10, 20 years. And probably when you were ascendant as a teenager, we were already past the point of, you know, huge brands giving 12-year-olds six-figure contracts and like, you know, like Quicksilver Crossing boat trips 4 times a year, what Billabong Bloodlines programs and stuff. But I'd imagine that when you were young, you were probably exposed to that generation ahead of you, getting these huge contracts, or going on these trips, or getting all this exposure and support. Is that something that you were kind of aware of, where you were like, oh man, like I'm not getting the same level of support that, make it up, you know, like Julian Wilson got 10 years earlier or something, you know? Or was it just something that you went, look, I'm playing the hand I'm dealt here?
Yeah, it was probably something I became more aware of in hindsight as I got older. Like looking back, going, wow, those guys were on that. Like, holy,
right, yeah,
that's crazy. But yeah, in the moment for me, I mean, as I was kind of alluding to before, it was never a sure thing. So I was just pretty grateful for anything I could get, and any opportunity I could get, I was just taking it and trying to run as far as I could with it. So yeah, I don't remember ever being too bitter about deals or this or that. It was kind of like, okay, well, this is what it is, and I'll make the best of it, essentially. But yeah, definitely looking back, you're kind of like, wow, we really missed the boat.
Just right, sure. All that looked really nice, like free money. Oh, unbelievable. But you talked about before. I'm curious to get your take on this too, because, you know, even though you're a young man and maybe you missed that bubble, like there still are surfers that are probably your age that qualify for the CT that never, I mean, respectfully, probably never worked a day in their life. But someone like yourself, like you mentioned, yeah, I worked in the warehouse at Vissla. Like Darren Handley, your shaper, was like, oh yeah, like Liam and Jacob worked in the warehouse at DHD. Like, well, talk to us a little bit about that. And just, I mean, I guess my question is, being an elite level athlete, there's a level of kind of pride and psychology that goes into that sometimes they're not up for, you know, working a job with a punch card, you know. But then on the other end of it too, like I'd imagine that gives you so much perspective and appreciation for the job you have now. But maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, for me, pretty much from school age when I kind of decided I wanted to have a go at the QS. It's probably, I was in year 10 or something, 15 years old or so. You had a few years to like finish school and think about it. But the deal with my parents was like I had to try at school and do my best, get the best grades I could, no pressure on it, but do the best I could and at least get a high school certificate. And then they'd help me out, getting me around the QS for a year just to see how I went, and I could defer uni or whatever I was going to do. And then if it went terribly, then I could come back and start work. And finished school and got on the QS and pretty much did terribly. I got to the end of the year, I was like, wow, I think that's it. I think I enrolled in uni at the time. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm starting uni next year. And I ended up winning a comp right at the end of the year, like the whole year. It was funny. I was actually looking at the results the other day. I was getting like the most ridiculous results in QS is like 82nd, 121st, and like just going, what? Holy crap. But yeah, after like this just string of losses, horrible like first round losses, I got a win, and it was like just enough to, dangle the carrot and go, okay, well, shit, maybe I should keep going. So yeah, that was kind of the case first year. So I was like, I'm going to keep going. And then, the more you go, your parents can't support you forever. So they're like, all right, like time to get a job. So I actually started working. I did a few random jobs, but the first real job where I was kind of working throughout the week, I was working in the warehouse at Whistler. But I was sponsored by Billabong at the time. I just knew John really well, and he offered me a job in the warehouse, which was cool because I was working with Toby, one of my really good friends, and a few of the other boys from around the Burleigh. So it was really cool. But then I was kind of doing it like sort of secretly, and I felt really bad because I wasn't like advertising Whistler stuff, but I was working in there. So I actually went to Billabong. I'm like, hey, I've got this. Like, I'm not getting paid enough to just surf, so I'm working this job, but it's for Whistler. And they were kind of like, oh, we'd rather you don't. And I'm like, okay, well, can you get me another job? So then they got me a job in one of their surf shops up near where I live. So I worked in there for a couple of years. And yeah, like you said, with just offering you perspective and experience, like those real life jobs are so, I don't know. So it was so important for me, especially that retail job, because I just dreaded the idea of working in retail. Like I was a very shy, still pretty shy person, but I was really shy. Like the idea of initiating a conversation with a complete stranger was just like, fuck, I'm not doing that. Like there's no way. And then this job, it pretty much entailed having to do that all day long. So it was very uncomfortable to start, but then it was just like a massive learning curve for me. And yeah, I feel like those social skills have helped me so much even since as a surfer on tour, and just having the confidence to be able to go and talk to people, as stupid as that sounds, but it was like actually a challenge at the time. And being able to converse with people and make small talk, it's kind of an undervalued skill. Like you gotta do a lot of small talking around a comp. So I'm definitely glad I went that path. And then that kind of ran its course, and then ended up at DHD doing a few odd jobs around the warehouse and around the factory.
Making sure that your board orders are moving to the front of the line when no one's looking and stuff like that. Yeah.
Just packing box after box.
Mick's off tour. He doesn't need these either.
I actually had to sticker like 50 Mick boards one day. It's just that I think they just ordered a whole heap to do giveaways with and just give to shops and charities and all the rest. And it was like a ridiculous amount of boards. And he's got so many stickers. So it's just like, far out. This has taken ages to sticker one board. So that was pretty classic. But no, it was all that stuff I'm grateful for, because it's helped me learn the skills I've got today and shape me into the person I am.
I feel like that's a lineup podcast breaking news exclusive, because I'm sure people are like, so what, the surfers themselves sticker all their boards? But no, like Mick Fanning has Liam O'Brien doing it in the factory. It's pretty good.
Yeah. No, that's not fair to say, because he was never going to ride them. They were for like charity and all that.
Sure,
but
yeah.
I did sticker some Mick boards.
There you go. We should all be so lucky. Well, we did talk about this a little bit in the intro, but I am curious too, because I mean, the fact is that pretty much any talented kid from the Gold Coast, I mean, maybe in the last 20 years, has likely had to contend with the very long shadows of accomplishment cast by the likes of as we said, Dean Morrison, Joel Parkinson, and Mick Fanning. You mentioned it before when you were younger that they were kind of these untouchable elder gods that you didn't really cross swords with. But, now that you're 25 and you're a CT surfer, like what's your relationship like with them today? Is it different than it was when you were a kid?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I won't say I'm super close with those guys, but I see them around a bit, obviously, being from the Gold Coast, and they're all such legends. It's been really cool to get that other sort of the perspective from the other side and actually get to know some of these legends that I just idolized and lauded as a kid. So yeah, those guys are really cool. Obviously still surfing amazing and massive heroes of mine. But as far as the shadow thing goes, I feel like when I was coming up, there was almost like a bit of a gap in the talent coming from the Gold Coast.
Right.
So I felt it was almost like the opposite. It was like, because of the former success of the Gold Coast, everyone wanted someone to come out of here again. But there just wasn't a lot of guys at the time. So I don't know, I felt like there was actually a lot of support for the next up and coming gen. It wasn't like, oh, you're going to tear us down or whatever. It was like, come on, like do it for the coast. We got to get someone on here. We can't just go from having the best of the best to no one. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. And then I got to know like the guys just above me as well, like Cruzy and Freestone and stuff pretty well, because they were kind of around doing the QSs when I was doing them. And no, I never really felt that whole pressure or feeling like I had to overcome some sort of big expectation or step out of someone else's shadow. It was more just an encouragement thing and trying to have as many people as we could from our little area.
That's very cool. We're going to take one more break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we will finish up with more Liam O'Brien on the lineup. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Burley Heads' Liam O'Brien. Liam, let's look ahead at the remainder of the CT calendar. We've talked about the past. We've talked about your genesis coming up through the ranks. By the time this episode airs, we would have completed the Shiseido Tahiti Pro presented by Outerknown, but we'll be heading into the Surf City El Salvador Pro presented by Corona, and then the Vivo Rio Pro presented by Corona, and then finally the Corona Fiji Pro. So we've got Tahiti, El Salvador, Rio, and Fiji. Looking at those back four events, which ones are you most looking forward to and why?
Oh, I mean, I got to say, Chopes and Fiji. No one's complaining getting barreled all event long. That's definitely the pinnacle. But I had a good time in El Salvador last year too. It's pretty similar waves to home there, as I said, right points. Kind of a lot like Burley Heads. So yeah, I was pretty comfortable at that wave and quite enjoyed it, which was cool. But yeah, getting barreled's the top of the list for me.
And growing up on the Gold Coast, this was always the knock on the Coolie kids when they started. And it was like, well, the right-handers are so good, they struggle on their backhand. Whether that was fair or not when they started, they absolutely remedied it and were world-class forehand and backhand. But you growing up here as well, going left and going on your backhand and maybe working out how to get barreled on your backhand, is that something that you've intentionally had to work on? And if so, how do you work on it on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, we got a couple of sneaky lefts around, if you're prepared to look for them, but yeah, definitely something I've worked on. But yeah, I've just been lucky to, especially doing contests and things, getting to travel to a lot of places where there are good lefts. And then, I don't know, I've just always trying to chase good barrels, left or right. So kind of end up, when I'm at a contest, if I'm chasing waves around the place, just kind of end up in those places. And yeah, you got to just figure it out. Do a couple of weird little technique things to begin with. But yeah, it's always, I mean, my whole approach, I'm always trying to get better at every little thing. But yeah, definitely, I don't know, you definitely got to look in some different spots in the Goldie to get your lefts, of course. You're not going to get many lefts out at Snapper or Burley. But no, there are some lefts around, and I've been fortunate to kind of live up the northern end because I am a drive from the points anyway. So kind of doesn't faze me whether I go and find a beachy or surf the point. I'm not kind of constantly having to go right all day long. Fair enough.
And one of the interesting, I guess, sort of offshoots or results of the redesign of the tours and competition calendar is that now there's a pretty beefy relative to what it was before, but off season. After the finals, you've got a few months before the start of the year. Do you have any plans like post CT season this year? Are you traveling? Or are you going to come home and just recoup? What do you think you're going to be doing towards the back half of 2024?
I'll probably just see how it goes when I get to that time, sure. But see how I'm feeling. But I'm pretty sure that I'll be trying to chase some waves somewhere. I always get pretty itchy feet when I'm at home and watching swells go elsewhere. I'm going, especially that time of year, it gets pretty small on the Gold Coast. So yeah, I'm hoping I'll be finding some waves somewhere and getting barreled, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I like it. Well, before you go, we put out a feeler to our followers on at the Lineup Pod on Instagram. They came back with a lot of questions for you, Liam, but we've whittled it down to 3. First question is from @C_side_tails, who asks, how hard is it really to be on the WSL Championship Tour?
How hard is it really?
Assuming you pretend it's not hard, I guess.
I mean, I guess you could approach that a few ways. Like to get there, it's really hard, and to stay there, it's really hard. I'm guessing. Like, there's a lot of good surfers out there. You can just watch. I mean, I've got the Challenger series going in the background here right now, and it's like everyone's just ripping. So, yeah, you can never really rest on your laurels and just relax. You always got to keep bettering yourself. But I mean, as for the lifestyle, it's a lot of traveling. You do get worn down at times, but I love it. Like, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So it's pretty good. It's definitely easier to do that and deal with a bit of stress and being tired than just working a typical job or going back to the warehouse or whatever. So I'm pretty happy doing it.
It's a good answer. You know, one of the things that comes up a lot too, and I've noticed it even just working on tour for 19 years, but a lot of times we hear from rookies or surfers that are just joining the tour for the first couple of years, they always comment on the speed of how fast people surf on the CT compared to even the CS. Because obviously, you know, you get all these talented surfers, they're coming from all over the world. They're great at every level. But sometimes what doesn't translate from real life to the broadcast or the webcast or whatever is just even the lower ranked surfers on the CT are still probably the fastest surfers you've ever seen in your life, just compared to anyone else. But I don't think that always translates to viewers watching. It's like every surfer on the CT is so good.
Yeah. I mean, even the Challenger, there's so many guys I could pick out of the comp right now and go, well, that guy could succeed on tour. Yeah, that guy could succeed. Right, yeah. I mean, we just saw George in the last 2 comps, George Pitter, and he just got a semi in West Oz and was surfing easily at the level. So it's pretty crazy in the sport at the moment. Of course, there's, you know, you got your top guys that are just freaks, but sure. I feel like the average is really close together across the board. I mean, I think the same in the women. Like, there's girls like, I think that just saw Erin Brooks get a 10 earlier. In
right, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
And, you know, that these are girls that aren't even on tour yet. So there's so much talent coming up. And, it's great to see. It's exciting. It's even exciting for me to watch. It's like, I love putting the contest on and watching it all go down. But, it's nerve-wracking for sure. You can't just sort of, you can't get there and go, all right, I'm here, I'm cruising. It's like, all right.
I made it. Yeah, right.
Keep working on it. But, no, I mean, you wouldn't want it any other way. Like, I think that, to comment on that speed thing, like and probably the talent thing as well, like just doing the tour and constantly surfing around other really good surfers, it keeps you pretty sharp. You know, you try not to, but you'll watch other people surf and you're going, like, I got to keep up with that. You're kidding me? But it pushes you at the same time. So it's pretty cool. Kind of off topic, but I remember one of the first times I did the QS, and I did a bit of coaching with Timmy McDonald actually before I left. He's like, all right, well, when you roll up to this QS, you're going to see the craziest surfing you've ever seen, but it doesn't matter. Like, don't worry about what you see in the free surf. It's all good. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, like whatever. And I think I got there and there's people doing full rotes every wave and doing the craziest shit I've ever seen. I'm just going, what? Like, I'm not going to make a heat in this thing. So yeah, it definitely keeps you sharp surfing with all the good surfers on tour. And you don't really get the full sense of it through the broadcast. Like, watching guys like Philippe and Ethan last year was so impressive live. Like, it's just, the speed and the power in their turns is just incredible.
Yeah. Second question is from Dave Chromo, who asks, what are DH's tweaks to your boards compared to what he shapes for Mick and Ethan?
Yeah, I mean, I was touching on it before, but for me, I really like a board that's just got a lot of drive and a lot of hold. They're like my two kind of biggest factors in a board. I want to be able to just take it to the point in the wave where it's really steep and then just push it as hard as I want and not have it slide out on me, essentially. So I started for a long time I was riding square tails and just like kept pulling them in, and it got to the point where he's like, why don't you just ride a round tail? So I ended up on the round tail and then got the rails pinched pretty low, but still didn't want really low volume boards. So I was getting him to put actually more foam in the boards, but in the center. So they had quite rolled decks. And then just the nose, like more flip in the nose. I was catching a lot on my forehand calves, especially kind of 2/3 of the way through the calve as I was kind of coming back down the wave up near the nose on my heel side rail. So we just like put more rocker into the nose, and that's helped a lot. So they're pretty much the main things. But then since, as I said, I kind of started getting on these Juliet boards, which has just thrown all that into a whirlwind. Now I'm back on square tails. So yeah, I don't know.
It sounds about right. Last question that we pulled from the group is from Logan and Marlo Harris, who asks, where do you go to school? What are you studying? And how do you fit it all in?
I went to high school at Benoa High, which is a suburb just sort of inland of Surfers Paradise. That's where I live as well. And then as for university, I enrolled in engineering and deferred it for a long time. And then across COVID, I was studying a bit, knocked a few units off. And then I was studying kind of while I was like part-time while I was on the Challenger Series. But then since qualifying, I feel like the commitments have ramped up a bit. I've seemed pretty busy, so I've just been deferring it and putting it off. So that's how I've been fitting it in, just not doing it at all.
Hey, it is fair. I mean, you get podcasters up your ass. There's all sorts of requirements for being an elite level sea surfer. But that's cool. And was engineering, was that something when you were in secondary school before university? Were you interested in that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. That's what I applied for straight out of school. And
yeah, right.
That was kind of the backup plan if the surfing went pear-shaped. So yeah, I've always like enjoyed kind of maths and problem solving and all that sort of stuff. So engineering's pretty much all that stuff boiled into making buildings and stuff. So I was pretty keen on it. And then especially now with like all the wave pool technology popping up, there's so many opportunities even in the surfing world. So yeah, I was definitely pretty interested in going that path and still am. But yeah, for now I'm just trying to focus full time on the surfing and get as much out of it as I can while I can. And then, yeah, I'm sure the body will give out at some point and I'll have to find something else to do. So hopefully I can still figure out how to solve a few equations. I probably won't have that by that point either, but we'll see how we go.
Makes sense. Well, thanks to everyone that wrote in. And at the Lineup Pod, we are now down to our final segment of the podcast. This is the lightning round. So these are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can.
All right.
First question. If you could only have one board setup for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
Oh, thruster. It's too reliable.
Coffee or tea?
I don't even drink either, but I'll go tea.
Burrito or pizza?
Oh, burrito. I love Mexican food.
Last book you ever read? Well, last book you read.
Last book I read was the current book I'm reading is Swan's Way, Marcel Proust, but I haven't gotten through it very far.
Okay. Best surf film ever?
Or Dear Suburbia for me, Kai Neville.
Very good. What is one wave you never have to go back to?
Geez. I did a QS in China. I don't actually remember what the wave was called, but it didn't get over knee high. So I probably don't need to go back there.
Totally fair. If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life and you can dreamcast it, perfect conditions, just your buddies, which wave would that be?
Be wrong to say any other spot than Burley Heads. Burley on its day is pretty special, so we'll say that.
Great choice. Best person to share a lineup with?
Ooh, lately, last few years, I've been traveling a lot with Matty McGillivrary, and he's great to have a surf with. Very cruisy. I think we're pretty similar out in the water, kind of just surfing, not taking it too serious. So, yeah, probably Matty.
Good answer. Worst person to share a lineup with?
I don't know. There's a few, every time I go to Snapper, there's a few worse people ever to share the lineup with. So I don't know.
They're constantly pushing the envelope out in Snapper.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by...
Probably eating lunch. I'm going to make a nice lunch after this, I think. And that'll probably make me pretty happy.
Well earned. Well, Liam O'Brien, congratulations on all your success. Everyone needs to check out El Paraíso when it comes out. But yeah, man, so glad we finally got to do this and looking forward to catching up with you down the track. Thanks for this.
Yeah, cheers, Dave. Thanks for having me.